Hey, welcome back to the Black Pill. This is Should We Offend People? Part 7. This is about mockery and power. Who are you not allowed to make fun of? They might not be the enemy. Should we mock Christians? We dealt with that in the last video, and now I want to move on. Should we mock Christianity or any other faith, for that matter? George Carlin is still really, really famous. You know who George Carlin was years after his death, in large part for his bits about religion. So I'm going to link a UB2B thingy for you. And I was listening again to this earlier, and here's the lines. There's an invisible man living in the sky who watches everything you do every minute of every day. The invisible man has a special list of 10 things he doesn't want you to do. And if you do any of these 10 things, he has a special place full of fire and smoke and burning and torture and anguish, where he will send you to live and suffer and burn and scream and cry forever and ever until the end of time. But he loves you. And he needs money. He always needs money. Yeah, he's really going after evangelical television pastors, but man, that fundamentalist stuff, it reminds me very, very much of Star Trek 5, where we find out Spock has a random brother we've never met before, and his brother is a religious fanatic, and he thinks that God lives past some visibility barrier at the center of the Milky Way, and they go there, and they meet God, and God wants to steal the Enterprise, Take me on board the Enterprise, get me out of here. And Shatner goes, Captain Kirk goes, what does God want with a starship? Right? Like that. So, man, is Jesus a zombie? Zombie Jesus Day, otherwise known as Easter. It's a way to point to the absurdity of a particular belief that Jesus died, was entombed in a cave, and then rose from the dead 3 days later. Some people draw a lot of meaning from the story of the risen Christ, pointing out the silliness of that belief can offend them. Should we care? Should we care some people are offended by the idea of zombie Jesus? This is a question of power. It's not a question of good manners or rudeness, it's a question of power and of response to abuse. Who can we mock? There are two important classes of people in the world, those with power and those who lack it. Some of us are one up in society. Some of us are one down. People in the up position, when they lack critical thinking skills or sometimes consciences, I'm looking at you, Nazis, look for rules. Look for rules to follow or to claim have been broken, depending who we are. A Christian says something demeaning about someone on the downside of power. In America, the America that's spelled with a K, that could be a Muslim, an atheist, a person of color, a sexual minority, a woman, or a Democratic voter. Ooh, don't like that last one? Because this is the country where we keep voting for Democrats but electing Republicans. How many of the last handful of presidents lost the popular vote? The ones who did were red team. See my previous video, why I voted Biden? Good. A Christian does a mockery, a joke, and someone goes, that's not nice. See, sometimes people are different from you and you're excluding them on some arbitrary basis, and that's bigotry. Then the Christian, being in this case, let's say not a good critical thinker, goes, then that rule applies to me too. Someone says Christ is a zombie, they're upset about it and complain. Wait, isn't this a double standard? Yep. It is a double standard. The short answer is yes. The longer answer is yeah. and for actual good reasons. There's a higher order rule. I started unpacking it in the previous video, asking if we should mock an individual Christian. In this argument, though, we're not talking about an individual making bad faith arguments in a public forum. We're talking about systems of power and their maintenance. Who are you not permitted to make fun of? I'm not talking about cancel culture. I'm talking about who can throw you in jail and take away your life or your livelihood if you make fun of them. Christianity is a power structure. It's a source of hope and meaning, as well as a moral inspiration to millions of people. It also oppresses billions more. Giant crucifixes stand watch over all manner of atrocity and human degradation. And nihilistic politicians use the faith of the masses to consolidate power into the hands of a few fascists and narcissists. I come out of care for adults who experience developmental disabilities. Virtually all of my adult clients experience post-traumatic stress disorder. And the leading cause of that disorder was religious caretakers. When a care agency sets up under a religious banner, I expect to hear about abuse. Stories ranged from weird problems with consent to actual physical torture. Consent. The ability to consider a proposition and make a decision. The legal age of consent for Americans is 18, and that assumes normal intellectual functioning. What does it mean to force children as young as 7 to recite the Pledge of Allegiance? Can you pledge lifelong, unbreakable allegiance to a nation whose history you haven't had a chance to learn? And what if all the history books are edited by right-wing Christians to omit any faults about America, any bad actions on the part of said nation, including the absurd step of removing any mention of slavery? This happens in group homes for disabled people. They're made to attend church every Sunday, to sit quietly in front, to sing at singing time and pray at praying time, and don't disrupt the proceedings. A human being with an IQ of 50 has so much worth in society. These are some of my best friends, and they can scarcely contemplate the nature of the universe. They don't know about God. They don't know what you're asking of them. My graduate students struggle with these concepts. Forcing an allegiance to a faith is abuse. Forcing? Well, if the person doesn't go through the motions, staff hit them. Or slam their fingers in doors, or deny food, or add chores, or verbally excoriate them. My favorite client had lost a thumb because his drunken Christian caregiver slammed the client's hand in a door. A car door. The client had an IQ somewhere around 20. He could say mom and hi. That was the extent of his vocabulary and his reasoning skills. He loved everyone, regardless of how they'd hurt him. He loved everyone. He's one of my heroes. Religious people use their faiths as excuses for rape, slavery, murder, war, all manner of social injustice. But hashtag, not all Christians. Here's the thing. I never see Christians working against the abuses of other Christians. I only see Christians working against a secular society that protects the rights of everyone, including Christians. I've been subjected to the low end of the abuses myself. In America, the one we spelled with a K, I was forced to worship the flag as a child when I was 7. And in English schools, I was made to sing hymns and punished with a stick or humiliated for being silent or even not singing loud enough. There are billions of us, people abused by humans in the name of God. So I might say, Christ wasn't a zombie at all. Christ was a vampire. All that stuff about this bread is my flesh and this wine is my blood, the blood is the life, that's vampire stuff. Not undeath, but eternal life through cannibalism. I might say it because religion is absurd and abusive, and joking about it, teasing, mocking, even directly insulting certain people some of the time is resisting abuse. It's preventing or forestalling abuse. But I'm different and I don't deserve that. Thing is, when you've been shot at, it gets harder to tell a good guy with a gun from a bad guy with a gun. And you react to all guns in the same way. Good guys with guns don't take their guns into public spaces. They advocate for gun safety laws. Power. Power. So you want to have a straight pride parade. Do it. You have First Amendment rights. But it's weird to have pride in something you have no choice about, right? If it's true that gay people are born that way, and the evidence is strongly, strongly in favor of this argument right now, then how can they be proud? Let's assume this is a good faith argument. It's not. It's not, because the people making the argument are proud to be Americans, but they were born here by accident. You didn't work hard to be an American, all right? Nothing to be proud of. But never mind that now. Never mind that. If you can be proud to be gay, why can't I be proud to be straight? Look, man, it's like this. Pride is the opposite of shame. Sexual minorities, people on the LGBTQIA plus spectrum, have been shamed or murdered for their immutable, unchangeable characteristics, basically for as long as we have historical records. I'm not ashamed to be gay just doesn't fit on the flag as neatly as pride. Nobody's telling straight people to be ashamed of being straight. Telling straight people that shaming gay people for being gay probably is unfriendly is not the same as telling them to be ashamed of being straight. It's telling them to be ashamed of being assholes. Nearly all of media in America, with a K, is geared toward hetero narratives. Heteronormativity even invades narratives not about sexuality at all, like the Golden Girls and the Big Bang Theory. See previous video. Why aren't those shows on weddings, for example? A straight pride parade isn't a thing that happens out of nowhere, or because straight people want to stand up for themselves. It arises as a slap in the face to outsiders, the outgroup, the scapegoats of society. A straight pride parade is a Confederate flag raised over the state capitol building at the start of the civil rights movement as a direct middle finger to black people seeking their civil rights. It's a white power demonstration across the street from a civil rights protest. It's a maskless bigot coughing in a nurse's face when asked to mask at the hospital during a pandemic. Power. Are you on the upside or the downside? The basic Christian in America is just that. Basic. About as poor as anybody else. Underemployed, undereducated, disempowered. Throwing the word privilege around probably is not helpful in these discussions. But at the same time, every Supreme Court justice ever has been a Christian, and every president. And 88% of the Congress and the Senate, with much higher numbers through history. Most circuit court judges, police officers, city council members, college professors, elementary school teachers, and school boards, Christian. Your faith, if not you individually, has massive power to oppress and suppress, to control the flow of information, to scapegoat vulnerable minorities, to gerrymander states so only people like you can get elected. A powerful person mocking a powerless one is a Nazi. A powerless person mocking a powerful system is a resistor. Christians resisting change are the problem. The status quo is broken, ridiculously unfair, and ultimately lethal. Climate change isn't coming, kids. It's here now. Demanding civility from people being treated uncivilly is, well, it's rape culture. Rape culture is a society that makes rape more likely by trivializing it, making spaces for it to happen, making unequal gender roles, and sometimes by using rape as power. Prison is a rape culture within a rape culture. I'm expanding this term from second wave feminism because it applies in other ways to other repressed or oppressed minorities. Black men who sit or kneel for the national anthem and are exposed to a parallel coercive power. The state demands you worship the state, and when you do not, sends out its enforcers. White Christian nationalists in the guise of patriots who will do anything, from verbal to physical coercion to lynching, to make an example of you. Who has power? That's the question. If you are on the upside of power, you do not deserve equal courtesy to people on the downside. In America, the purpose of free speech is to protect dissent. The most minority speakers, sometimes the most disturbing speakers, are the most vulnerable and therefore receive the most protection. Without this right, we'd be any other imperial autocracy. This right must be tempered when talking about the powerless and much less limited when talking about the powerful. Remember this: the more trans people are used as political footballs, J.K. Rowling is going to headline a local convention next month, and I'm not going. And half the people I know who were planning to go aren't going because they found out that Rowling's going to headline it. Rowling is an unapologetic TERF. That's a trans exclusionary radical feminist, like the southern state demagogues who believe trans women are just pervy men trying to get into the toilet with your little girls. The more that kind of language is used to whip up far-right voters, the more trans people are murdered. The two riskiest American demographics are Native Americans off reservation and Black trans women. Look, I'm unlikely to make fun of you. Honestly, I'll just block your shit. Nazis thrive on conflict, false equivalences, bad arguments, and moral gray areas. I don't even spend a lot of time mocking power structures. I have other means of exerting influence these days, and I use them. But I am asserting that right. Not to mock an individual person, but to mock irrational, immovable, harmful beliefs. Not to change the hardest core adherents, but to give power to the powerless. To dissipate the aura of authority around bigots, charlatans, fundamentalists, and fucking Nazis. Next up, offensiveness as protest.